This is Keith Helwig from Cops Corrections Videos. Today I want to talk about the cops you're going to meet if you are a cop. Now I'm using the term cop as a generic term for correctional officers and as police officers. If you're a cop, you're going to meet someone that I will term as a Marvin. Now I've worked with a Marvin. A Marvin is an individual who's 22, 23 years old, they're fresh out of college, they've got their degree in criminal justice, they've got their certification from the state, and they come onto the job and they know everything. Because they've been through college and they've got that degree and they're young and they're just full of vim and vigor. But working with Marvins isn't fun because a Marvin knows everything. I recall in particular a Marvin that I was working with. I was trying to train him. Anytime I would ask him the procedure on something, he would dismiss it as saying, well, I don't know. Well, then I'd go through the procedure with him and he'd say, well, I knew all that. Well, Marvin didn't last. The last I heard of Marvin is that he was driving an ice cream truck for Swan's Ice Cream, and I sure as hell hope he's a better ice cream salesman than he was a cop. Marvin may have had book knowledge, Marvin may have knew the law, Marvin didn't know how to act with people. He felt that when he put that badge on and that gun belt on, that he had a bulletproof ass. It was his theory that he was the cop, you're not, so you're going to listen to him. Don't be a Marvin. Then there's another young officer, a Justin. Now Justin is the name of a real individual. Justin is the name of an officer that works on one of the departments that I work on. Justin was going through criminal justice roughly the same time as Marvin. They went to the same school, they had the same teachers, they ended up with the same degree. Justin did ride-alongs with me for probably at least a dozen times. After about the third or fourth ride-along, it didn't seem like I had a criminal justice student riding along with me. It seemed as though I had another cop riding along with me. If I stopped and it was a medical call, Justin knew to pop the trunk, grab the med kit, grab the AED, and hit the door. Another thing I can recall, when I was in high school, I took French. I was offered Spanish, but I took French. Now, don't ask me why. The only complete sentence I remember in French is Je n'ai pas de crayon. That means this is not the pencil. I went to Paris a few years ago and I never got to tell anyone this is not the pencil, nor have I ever used it at any other point of time in my life. I wish I'd have taken Spanish. Back to my story. I'd conducted a traffic stop and Justin was riding with me. The car was full of Hispanic individuals with a female Hispanic driving, and none of them spoke English. Well, Justin had assumed the passenger side position, and he could hear what the passenger was telling me, and he could hear what I was saying. Well, Justin had ridden with me long enough so that he knew what I usually said when I performed a stop, and he informed me that he was fluent in Spanish. So Justin spoke to the woman in Spanish, and come to find out she had a warrant out for his arrest, so appropriate action was taken. Now Justin works full-time in corrections. He works part-time as a police officer. He's a conscientious individual. He's a sympathetic, empathetic individual who utilizes good common sense. Be a Justin. Another officer that you're going to run into, regardless of your department, is the officer who has 5 to 10 years in. And they are the officer that has done a lot. They know the law, they've kept current, they're still pretty gung-ho, but they're also full of themselves. You know what I mean, you've all met the type, they're full of themselves. They don't have time for the rookies. They don't seem to remember the time when they walked in the squad room or sat behind the wheel of the squad car and they didn't know their ass from their elbow. And they get kind of frustrated when they have to deal with somebody who doesn't know it, not remembering that they were in that position at one time themselves. Now they can be good cops, but they can be insufferable individuals. On the other side of the coin, you've got the officer that has 5 to 10 years seniority who remembers what it was like to walk through that door, remembers what it was like to be a new officer, and he's going to help you. He's going to be a resource for you. He's going to be someone who's not only going to teach you rules, regulations, policies, procedures, but he's also going to teach you how to deal with people. That's the officer you need to emulate. Now moving further up the scale, every institution or every police department has the crusty, salty old fart. You know the type. Been there, done that, seen it, done it all, ain't gonna do it again. In corrections, this is the guy who refuses to do a strip search because they spent more time on a crapper than you spent in uniform and they aren't gonna look at any more butts and nuts. They're the guy that's not gonna check under the bunks during cell searches. They're the guy who's probably gonna run a little slower to trouble calls. Not just because of their age, but because they choose to do that. Conversely, you have the crusty old fart who's been there, done that, seen it all, and he's going to do it again. He's going to be the first one on the scene of an accident. He's going to be the first one to fight in a cell hall. He's going to be the first one to give you good advice when you need good advice. That's the officer you should try to emulate. As I look back on my career, I can honestly say that I learned a lot from every officer I worked with. If it was a good officer, I learned to emulate their compassion. I learned to emulate their discretion and their common sense. If it was a bad officer, I learned what not to do. We can all learn from each other no matter what stage of our career we're in. Whether we're a rookie, whether we're a mid-grade officer, or whether we're a crusty old fart, we can all learn from each other. Never stop learning. Until next time, this is Keith Helwig. Stay safe and watch your back.